Pause here for a moment, because what is unfolding around your name is not ordinary. Something has been held back for too long, and now it has begun to rise to the surface with a force no one in that room was prepared to witness. Someone who tried to appear calm, someone who tried to act as if your presence did not affect them, someone who thought they could bury the truth under silence, manners, pride, and careful words, finally reached the edge of what their heart could carry. And in front of family, where secrets are usually dressed neatly and emotions are usually controlled, the truth about you came out. Not softly, not perfectly, not the way they planned. It came out through a moment they could not manage, a reaction they could not hide, a sudden crack in the version of themselves they had been presenting to everyone. Heaven saw it before it happened. The angel stood near, not to cause it, but to witness what the heart does when it can no longer pretend. There are moments when a person does not confess because they are brave. They confess because the truth becomes heavier than their fear. And this was one of those moments. They had been sitting among familiar faces, surrounded by voices that thought they understood the situation. Family members spoke with confidence. Some assumed they knew your place in this person's life. Some thought you were just a chapter, a passing feeling, a name that could be mentioned casually and dismissed just as easily. But they did not know what heaven knew. They did not know how many nights your name had returned to this person's mind like a light shining through a closed door. They did not know how deeply your absence had been speaking. They did not know that every time someone tried to reduce you, something inside this person became restless. At first, they tried to stay quiet. Their hands were still, but their spirit was not. Their face looked controlled, but their heart was moving like a storm behind a curtain. Someone in the family said something about you. Not loud enough to seem dramatic. Not cruel enough for everyone to notice immediately. Just a sentence, small on the surface, but sharp in the hidden place. And when that sentence landed, something inside them changed. They looked down. They swallowed words. They tried to let it pass. But what heaven had been allowing to build in silence suddenly pressed against their chest. You must understand this. Clearly, this was not only about defending you. It was about revealing what you mean. It was about the difference between a person who talks about love and a person who can no longer tolerate hearing your value misunderstood. For a long time, they had hidden behind timing, hidden behind uncertainty, hidden behind family expectations, old wounds, outside opinions, and the fear of what would happen if they chose what their soul already knew. But when your name was placed in the center of that conversation, the truth stood up inside them before they could stop it. And then the room shifted. It was subtle at first. A pause that lasted slightly too long. A silence that made one person glance at another. The kind of silence that announces something before words arrive. They raised their eyes, and those who knew them well could tell something was different. Their expression was not angry in the way people expected. It was not careless. It was not wild. It was the look of someone whose heart had reached a sacred limit. They were not about to create chaos. They were about to speak from the place they had been avoiding. Someone asked them what was wrong. That question opened a door. They did not answer immediately, because the first answer would have been too small. They could have said, nothing. They could have smiled and changed the topic. They could have protected the room from discomfort, protected themselves from exposure, protected everyone else from realizing how serious this had become. But there are certain moments ordained by heaven where a person cannot return to the old pattern. A moment where the soul whispers, not this time. And when that whisper came, they listened. Their voice changed. Not louder at first, but deeper, heavier, honest in a way that made the room stop pretending. They said they were tired of people speaking about you as if you were not important. They said they were tired of hearing assumptions. They said there were things no one understood. And then, as if one sentence pulled another from the depths, they began saying what they had never said fully before. They spoke of how you affected them without trying, how your presence stayed with them after conversations ended, how there were things about you they noticed quietly, things they never admitted because admitting them would mean admitting that you had entered places in their heart no one else had reached. They spoke of your strength, but not in a shallow way. They spoke of the way you kept standing even when life gave you reasons to become cold. They spoke of your softness, your dignity, your mysterious silence, your way of carrying pain without turning it into bitterness. And while they were speaking, some family members became still because they realized this was not a casual defense. This was a revelation. Stay till the end, because what came out next was the part nobody expected. One person in the family tried to interrupt. They tried to bring logic into a moment that had already become spiritual. They said something about being realistic. They said emotions can confuse people. They said maybe this person was exaggerating. And that was when the hidden truth rose even higher. Because the one who had been holding back looked at them and said, in a voice that carried months of silence, "You do not know what this person has been to me." That sentence did not fall to the floor. It stayed in the room. Even the ones who wanted to disagree could not speak quickly after that. Because there are words that carry evidence beyond explanation. They could hear it. They could hear that this was not performance. This was not a temporary feeling. This was not someone trying to win an argument. This was someone finally allowing the truth to stand uncovered. Heaven wants you to know that your name has been moving through conversations you were not invited into, but your spirit was present there. Your value has been debated by people who do not know the full story. Your intentions have been questioned by people who never saw your private tears, your quiet loyalty, your unseen patience, your sacrifices, your prayers, your inner battles, your moments of almost giving up and still choosing grace. But when the time came for the truth to be defended, heaven did not need you to enter the room. Heaven stirred the heart of someone who could no longer remain silent. And the strongest part is this. They were not only defending who you are. They were confessing what they feel. That is where the atmosphere became different. Because family can handle explanations. Family can handle polite disagreement. But family knows when a heart is exposing itself. They saw the tremble in the words. They saw the emotion behind the eyes. They saw that your name was not just a name to this person. It was a doorway into something they had been trying to understand, resist, hide, and protect all at once. They said there were moments when they tried to move forward without thinking of you, but something always brought them back. They said they compared the feeling they had with you to every other calm, every other connection, every other plan, and nothing carried the same weight. They admitted that even when they looked silent from the outside, inside they were fighting memories, questions, and a pull they could not explain. And when they said this, one family member's face changed, because that person suddenly understood that the story was much deeper than they had been told. But the room was not ready for the next confession. They revealed that they had been protecting your image even when they were confused. They had been watching how people spoke of you. They had been remembering details no one knew they remembered. They had been carrying a private fear that if they waited too long, if they listened too much to the wrong voices, if they allowed pride to delay them, they might lose something heaven had placed before them with rare timing. And when those words came out, it was as if the hidden map of their heart became visible for a moment. My dear listener, this is why you have felt strange shifts in your spirit. This is why, even when nothing appeared to be happening, something inside you sensed movement. You thought maybe you were imagining it. You thought maybe your heart was making meaning out of silence. But heaven had already begun arranging the exposure of what was hidden, not to embarrass anyone, not to create fear, but to separate truth from confusion. There was a moment in that family gathering when someone mentioned your past. Not fully, not with understanding, just enough to suggest that maybe you were not as simple as this person believed. And instead of stepping back, instead of becoming uncertain, instead of letting doubt take control, they became more serious. They said, everyone has a past, but not everyone has a heart like that. And that was when the room truly changed, because now they were not just defending you from misunderstanding. They were choosing to see you with mercy, maturity, and depth. They were saying that what they saw in you was not erased by what others questioned. They were saying that your journey did not make you less worthy. It made your light more meaningful. And heaven wants you to receive this carefully. Someone is finally seeing beyond the surface. Someone is finally understanding that the parts of you others misread were actually proof of what you survived, what you learned, and what God preserved inside you. There are people who only recognize treasure when it shines in public. But there are rare souls who begin to recognize treasure while it is still covered in dust from battles no one saw. This person is beginning to recognize you in that way. Not as an idea, not as a fantasy, not as someone perfect, but as someone real, someone carrying a presence they cannot replace. The family did not all respond the same way. Some became quiet with respect. Some were surprised. Some were uncomfortable because the truth challenged the story they had built. And one person, someone whose opinion has carried weight for a long time, asked a question that made the whole moment even more intense. They asked, "Are you saying this person matters that much to you?" The answer did not come quickly. That pause was powerful, because in that pause, they had one final chance to hide, one final chance to reduce it, one final chance to say, "I am just explaining," or "I care, but not like that," or "it is not serious." But their heart had already crossed a line. The truth had already entered the room. And once truth enters with heaven behind it, it does not easily return to silence. They looked at the person who asked. Their face softened, but their voice became firm. And they said, "Yes, more than I admitted." Those words carried a weight that reached beyond the room. Something in the spiritual atmosphere shifted when they said it, because confession has power. Not because words are magic, but because honesty breaks agreements with fear. Every time a person admits what is true, a false structure loses strength. Every time someone speaks with sincerity after hiding for too long, confusion loses a little more ground. And in that moment, the confusion around you began to lose its grip. Do not miss this part. They did not say everything yet. They did not reveal the full depth. They did not pour out the entire story. But what came out was enough to awaken the room. Enough to make people look at them differently. Enough to make certain family members realize they had underestimated the bond, underestimated the emotional weight, underestimated the way your name lives inside this person's private world. And while this was happening, heaven was watching you too. Because you have been in your own quiet season. You have wondered why certain doors felt delayed. You have wondered why people could misunderstand you while you were trying so hard to remain pure in your intentions. You have wondered why love, connection, recognition, or clarity seem to move so slowly. But sometimes heaven does not rush exposure. Sometimes heaven lets silence gather evidence. Sometimes heaven allows a person to sit with their own feelings long enough that when they finally speak, they cannot call it impulse. They must call it truth. This is what is happening now. A truth that was once hidden inside them has started moving outward. First into their thoughts, then into their emotions, then into their restless nights, then into small reactions, then into private conversations, and now, in front of family, into spoken words. Do you see the progression? Heaven has been unfolding this step by step, not randomly, not carelessly, but with a timing that forces every heart involved to reveal its real position. Someone in that room tried to soften the moment by saying they only wanted what was best. That sounded kind on the surface, but heaven knew there was also fear behind it. Fear of change, fear of losing control, fear of seeing this person choose something that did not fit the family's expectations. And when that sentence was spoken, the one who lost control emotionally did something no one expected. They did not argue. They did not attack. They simply said, "Then you need to understand what is best for me may be connected to the person you keep questioning." That sentence opened another door, because now it was no longer only about defending your character. It was about direction. It was about choice. It was about the possibility that you are not simply someone they care about, but someone connected to the future they have been afraid to claim. Some family members looked shocked because they realized this was moving from emotion into decision. And decision is where hidden feelings become visible consequences. Heaven wants you to notice the pattern. For a while, people may have spoken about you as if you were outside the circle, as if your role could be decided without your presence, as if your value could be measured by opinions, rumors, assumptions, or incomplete details. But God does not measure you by the narrow language of people who only saw fragments. God sees the full architecture of your becoming, the wounds you did not advertise, the prayers you whispered when nobody answered, the restraint you showed when you could have defended yourself loudly, the kindness you gave even when your heart was tired, the way you kept moving, even when life made you feel unseen. And now, someone is beginning to speak from that deeper recognition. This is why the moment became unstoppable. Because it was not one emotion. It was many hidden emotions arriving together. Regret, protection, longing, admiration, fear of loss, a need to correct the record, a need to stop pretending, a need to make the family understand that you are not a small matter. And when all those emotions rose at once, control slipped away, but not in a destructive way. It slipped away in a revealing way. They may have raised their voice slightly. They may have spoken faster than usual. They may have said more than they intended. They may have shown emotion they normally hide. But heaven is telling you that sometimes a controlled face can hide a confused heart, while an uncontrolled moment can reveal an honest one. What looked like a loss of control was actually the breaking of a mask. And this mask had been heavy. They had worn it in front of others. They had worn it in front of themselves. They had acted uncertain when they were deeply affected. They had acted distant when they were listening for any sign of you. They had acted practical while their spirit kept returning to the same question: what if this connection is not ordinary? And the more they tried to dismiss it, the more your presence became undeniable. Do not skip this truth. You are not being revealed because you forced anything. You are being revealed because what is real cannot stay buried forever. There is a difference between chasing recognition and being recognized by divine timing. You did not need to stand in that room and defend your worth. You did not need to explain every misunderstood detail. You did not need to convince every family member. Heaven allowed the truth to rise through the one person whose words would carry the most weight in that moment. And even if they did not say everything perfectly, they said enough to shift the atmosphere. After the confession, the room did not return to normal immediately. Conversations became careful. People who had spoken confidently before now chose their words with more caution. Some looked at this person with concern, others with surprise. One family member looked away because they realized they had been wrong about the depth of the situation. Another became quiet because they sensed that pushing further might reveal even more than everyone was ready to hear. And that is when something deeply emotional happened. The person who had spoken about you suddenly became aware of how much they had exposed. They looked around the room and realized the family now knew what they had tried to keep private. Their breathing changed. Their expression shifted. Not with regret exactly, but with the shock of someone who had finally heard their own truth out loud. Sometimes a person does not fully understand what they feel until they say it in front of witnesses. And when they heard themselves speak of you that way, something inside them stopped denying. That is one of the most important parts of this message. They did not only reveal you to the family, they revealed themselves to themselves. Because once one person begins to question the wrong story begins to weaken. Once one person wonders whether you were judged unfairly, whether your silence was misread, whether your distance had reasons, whether your heart was more sincere than they knew, the atmosphere begins to change. Heaven often begins correction through one honest question. And correction has begun. Now listen closely, because this next part is not only about them. It is about you. You are entering a season where the truth about you will begin to reach places you never entered physically. Rooms will hear a clearer version of your heart. People who only knew fragments will be confronted with fuller understanding. Those who casually dismissed you will sense they were too quick. Those who thought your silence meant weakness will realize it was wisdom. Those who thought you were easily replaceable will see that your absence created an echo no one could ignore. For so long, their feelings may have moved like shadows, present, powerful, but unnamed. They could tell themselves it was curiosity. They could tell themselves it was concern. They could tell themselves it was unfinished emotion, timing, attachment, or confusion. But once they defended you with that much force, once they admitted you mattered more than they had said, once they connected you to what might be best for their future, the old explanations became too small. Heaven is saying the truth has outgrown the hiding place. And now the next movement begins. Because after a truth comes out in front of family, it does not simply disappear. It travels. It creates private conversations after the gathering ends. It causes people to rethink what they assumed. It causes the person who spoke to replay every word. It causes certain relatives to ask questions later. It causes one person, perhaps the most unexpected one, to become curious about you in a new way. And it causes the heart at the center of it all to feel both exposed and strangely relieved. They may not have contacted you yet. They may not know how. They may be trying to gather their thoughts. They may feel embarrassed by how much they revealed. They may wonder whether heaven allowed that moment because something bigger is approaching. But make no mistake, they are not in the same place they were before that family moment. Something crossed from hidden to spoken, and spoken truth begins to demand alignment. You have felt this in your own life too. Once you say the truth, you cannot unknow it. Once you admit what your soul has been carrying, you cannot return comfortably to pretending. That is where this person is now. They are standing between the old version of themselves and the honest version that just stepped forward in front of everyone. And the family is standing there too, forced to decide whether they will resist what is becoming clear or humble themselves enough to see what heaven may be doing. There is one family member who did not speak much during the moment, but their silence was not empty. They watched carefully. They noticed the emotion. They noticed the way this person's voice changed when your name came up. They noticed that this was not drama, not weakness, not temporary excitement. They noticed the sincerity. And later, that quiet observer may become more important than anyone expects, because sometimes heaven places one calm witness in the room to remember the truth accurately when others try to twist it. This witness saw something. They saw that your name affected the room because it affected the heart of the person speaking. They saw that what came out was not rehearsed. They saw that the family had stepped into a truth bigger than gossip, bigger than opinion, bigger than surface understanding. And when the moment ended, this witness carried a question inside. what if we have misunderstood this person completely? That question is dangerous to false narratives. But heaven is not doing this to feed pride. Heaven is doing this to restore order. Because your name has carried burdens it did not deserve. Your intentions have been placed under shadows they did not create. Your emotional depth has been misread by people who were not patient enough to understand it. And God, in His timing, knows how to let truth rise without you needing to shout. This is why you must remain steady. Do not rush to prove yourself. Do not chase the room. Do not panic because you cannot see every conversation. Do not assume silence means nothing is happening. The most meaningful shifts are often invisible at first. Roots move underground before trees move in the wind. Hearts change privately before actions become public. Families reconsider quietly before words become apologies. And someone's soul may be moving toward courage while their hands still look still. The person who lost control in front of family is now facing a mirror. And the mirror is not gentle, but it is holy. It is showing them the distance between what they have felt and what they have done. It is showing them the cost of delay. It is showing them how much they allowed other voices to influence something sacred. It is showing them that they cannot keep calling you important while treating the truth like a secret forever. And this is where the message becomes heavier. Because after that family moment, one specific question began to follow them. It did not leave when the gathering ended. It did not disappear when they tried to distract themselves. It sat with them quietly, almost like an angel had placed it in their path. What are you going to do now? That question is now moving through their spirit. Not what do you feel. They already exposed that. Not what do others think. Others have already spoken enough. Not whether you matter. That truth has already been released. The question now is what they will do with the truth they could no longer hide. And heaven is watching that answer form. There is something else you need to know before this part closes. When the truth came out, one detail was almost spoken, but they stopped themselves. A detail connected to a private moment, a memory, a sign, or something they realized about you when no one else was paying attention. Their lips came close to revealing it. Their eyes shifted. Their voice paused. And for a second, it seemed as if they were about to say the one thing that would have changed the entire room completely. But they held it back. Not because it was untrue. Because it was too powerful for that moment. And now that unspoken detail is burning inside them even more than before. It is the part of the truth that did not come out yet. The part heaven has not allowed everyone to hear yet. The part connected to why your name shook them so deeply. The part that may explain why they became so emotional, why the family went silent, why one witness kept watching, and why this situation is not finished.